welcome back. How was your break, Jake?
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah?
Lengthy. I ran a few miles, wrote a book.
Half marathon? Yeah, so I grabbed myself some water and got 2 sips in. So, I'm obviously not as talented as you running half marathons and writing an entire novel series during the break.
Entire encyclopedia, not just a novel. Let's get it right.
So on the left-hand side here, we've actually seen both of these players on stream before, but at this point they are both 2-1, so this is kind of a win-in match for them. So it was very much important to bring them back because this is a pretty critical match for them. So at this point we saw on the right-hand side we've got Ethan, aka PacoTaco, and Ethan had quite a bit of variation available in his team. So one Pokemon that we didn't get to see from him was that Persian. So we still don't have any information on our side from that. And then on the left-hand side, we see Josh, a.k.a. Feint, a.k.a. PogChamp. He's got a lot of alts. One thing that I did mention when we were watching him the first time is that he is known for having some shenanigans going on his team. And so we did see that his Groudon is one of the substitute Groudons. We haven't seen too many more shenanigans out of him yet on this team.
There isn't really a whole lot of room for like weird techs on his team. Maybe on the Koko, but the Pokemon he's running generally have like 1 or 2 good sets, and deviating from them is pretty suboptimal to the point where even if you like improve one fringe matchup, it's generally not worth it.
Yeah, especially one of the cool techs that you could potentially see out of Tapu Koko would be like Electro Web. Right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately for him, especially in this matchup, that wouldn't be an option for him. So right now we've got Bronzong and Smeargle coming out for Ethan, and then we've got Incineroar and Xerneas coming out for Josh. So one interesting thing that you had noted during one of the breaks is that we didn't get to see the 4th move on Smeargle yet. So we saw Ethan go ahead and bring Spore with that Smeargle, Spiky Shield, Follow Me, but we haven't seen what that 4th move potentially is, because in round 1 he was up against Psychic Terrain. So now we get to see that Fake Out being the 4th move, and then Trick Room coming out for this Bronzong, now putting Ethan in a pretty good position.
Not with that speed boost, so that's a little bit
yeah, that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, so Ethan, gets Trick Room up. No one takes any damage other than the 7 that Incineroar took from that Fake Out. But the Bronzong here, I mean, it can Gyro Ball the Xerneas if it really wants to. I kind of doubt that Josh will just let that happen, and so even if it does, since it's at -1 attack and Xerneas isn't boosted, it won't be a whole lot of damage. We do just see a Gyro Ball straight away, though.
Yeah. And so one thing that Josh may not know, but we got to see on stream, is that this Bronzong does have a damage-reducing berry on it, so he's going to be able to survive a super effective fire attack, potentially. So we do see that Josh doesn't want to boost Xerneas' speed any extra, so he goes for that Dazzling Gleam. There was a Snarl out here to kind of hit both sides of the field, do some super effective damage to that Bronzong, even though it was pretty limited. And then Spore comes out.
I fully expected that Dazzling Gleam to knock out Smeargle, and it actually hung on, able to get a Spore off, and so the speed boost, while it definitely hurt Ethan a little bit, it not neutral at the end of this turn, because it was still able to get this Spore off. Possibly at the expense of a little bit more damage, because it could have spored the Xerneas before it went for Dazzling Gleam. But the Bronzong is still in a position where I can Gyro Ball this Xerneas if it would like to. Smeargle is pretty low now, so it doesn't really want to stay in the field too much longer, but Ethan has a lot of flexibility here because the Incineroar is guaranteed to stay asleep this turn.
Absolutely. So we do see that Smeargle will go ahead and switch out, save that Fake Out potentially for later. Groudon does come in here. We do know that this Bronzong has quite a bit of interesting tech on it. Could switch Levitate over to that Groudon, which may not be that beneficial, but he's going to go for that Gyro Ball just here to chip some more extra damage. And I say chip, well, that's a hefty amount of damage. Basically taking Xerneas a chip shot away. So now we've got Incineroar just kind of sitting there, again, as you said, not able to move this turn, guaranteed.
Kind of interesting that Josh is essentially just throwing away his Xerneas here for not a whole lot of gain. Like, he gets Smeargle, though, which would have happened regardless anyway. Like, Smeargle's not a Pokemon that's going to be staying healthy for the rest of the game. And he didn't really give himself the chance to start, going in with his Xerneas, possibly trying to rely on, his other hard hitters on his team for damage. But, at this point, we know that the Groudon on Ethan's end, it's not intimidated, is at full power. And so if it is able to fire off something like, Precipice Blades this turn, we'll be able to knock both of these Pokemon out unless Josh is able to switch on his Salamence, run Intimidate, possibly Protect with one of them or both of them to make sure that there's less damage coming out.
Again, man, you are just like calling shots today. Salamence coming out for that that Incineroar. Josh making sure that he's got double Intimidate on this team because Groudon is such a big threat. And then Gravity coming out. Ethan absolutely understanding what the potential capabilities are that Josh has. So he goes for the Sword Stance to negate that Intimidate, brings out the Gravity here to make sure that he's going to be able to hit this Salamence, even though it's it is a flying type. It's technically not now. What a really good play.
Yeah, super smart Sword Stance. He knew that Salamence very likely coming in to Groudon. Now he has that +1 attack instead of -1, and so with the combination of that Gravity and Sword Stance means that Xerneas is guaranteed to be knocked out by Precipice Blades as long as it doesn't Protect. Salamence probably would not get knocked out, but take a pretty hefty chunk of damage, especially if that Bronzong throws in a Gyro Ball as well. And so Ethan in a very, very strong offensive position right now.
Absolutely. So we do see this Salamence go for a Mega and a Protect. Wants to keep that Salamence alive when Trick Room fades. So now Bronzong is going to go ahead.
Interesting.
So he's going to go ahead and I can't wrap my head around that play. That's so funny.
Possibly trying to fish for Intimidate. Like if he switched Incineroar into that slot, he could have stolen Intimidate and gotten Intimidate off on Salamence or something. But...
and I mean, at that point, it's kind of funny because, as you said, like it could have been fishing for a switch there, trying to get the Intimidate because Gravity's up, so that Levitate wasn't going to help Xerneas at all.
Right.
So it's a really funny play. At that point, there's kind of two ways that I see that play coming from Ethan. Either that was kind of just, hey, I know that I've got this advantage this turn, and calling the Salamence Protect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, basically saying, I'm in your head, and that mental game is really important. And if you know that your opponent has absolute dominating control over a game, to the point that they can make a move like that, right? Like, that's kind of scary.
A little bit, yeah. Good positioning from Josh here, though, because now he's in a position where he can just Hyper Voice and Precipice Blades. We know that his Groudon's pretty fast, so very likely faster than Ethan's Groudon on this Trick Room team. And he's just going to be able to knock out this Bronzong with the Hyper Voice and Precipice Blades thanks to that Gravity and that skill swap. Either one would have done it.
Yeah.
But Ethan now is going to have that switch into something of his choosing.
So yeah, as you said, there's an open switch here where Ethan can kind of make a good decision to try and bring in that Smeargle that he saved earlier in the game, so that survival is pretty clutch at this point. But now we're at the point where basically Ethan is kind of at a little bit of a disadvantage, it seems, maybe?
A little bit, yeah. Like, we know Smeargle has Fake Out, but there really isn't much stopping Josh from just double protecting this turn if he's really scared of something like a Fake Out Blades.
Mm-hmm.
But Ethan could get bailed out by a Moody Boost here. He actually calls the Protect correctly, so a good turn from Ethan. He's going to be able to get this big Precipice Blades off, but I'm struggling to see how he's going to be able to weather this storm of the Salamence plus Groudon offense because we know all of Smeargle's moves at this point. It's got Fake Out, Follow Me, Spore, and Spiky Shield. There's no Wide Guard. Something like Hyper Voice, Precipice Blades here would be pretty free.
Yeah. So, an incredibly good call on Ethan's side. He does pretty well understand where Josh is at in each individual turn, it seems like. But then it almost like he just didn't quite have enough turns of Trick Room to really dominate this match totally to the end. I don't know. Like, I guess it kind of comes down to what he's got in the back, whether he can get some damage in with this spiky shield, right?
Right.
I mean,
at this point, I think he's trying to fish for Moody. Either that or hoping to stall out gravity and dodge Precious Blades or something. But at this point, he's kind of just delaying the inevitable at this point. Possibly a speed boost could help him, put something to sleep if he really needs to. Accuracy ray is not what he needed, so.
Yeah, unfortunately, not being 2016 with Dark Void, that accuracy boost doesn't do him any good because Dark Void is only available on Dark right now.
Something like a Hyper Voice Precipice Blades from Josh, again, is pretty hard to punish because you kind of have to decide which of your Pokemon you want to give up. Potentially, you can hope to dodge Precipice Blades with your Groudon and fire back with your own. But if Ethan has, I think he has the Salamence was his Mega, and so if he has a Salamence in the back, that could be a little bit helpful, but it'd still take a lot of damage from a Hyper Voice on the Switch, and so pretty tough spot for Ethan here.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, it looks like he's trying to weather the storm on that gravity, maybe try and put himself in a better position. But this Hyper Voice, again, as you've said, almost impossible for Ethan to punish at this point, because Hyper Voice doesn't miss, so he might be able to dodge that Precipice Blades, and it doesn't affect this Salamence, but this is a +1 Precipice Blades going directly into a Groudon, and so the RNG going heavily in Ethan's favor on that turn. What an incredible string of luck for him.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate for Josh. He played that position game really well and got to that point where he knew that he could just Hyper Voice and Precipice Blades without much risk. And the only risk was inevitable. There's really nothing you can do to stop the Precipice Blades missing. And Ethan, smartly stalling out gravity. That shouldn't be downplayed. He knew that gravity was up. He knew that dodging was one of his bigger win conditions. And so knowing that, if he could wait till gravity ended, he had a way better shot of finding a way to eke out this game. And that's exactly what he did. But the Xerneas on Ethan's side is going to be pretty hard to stop at this point.
Yeah, and so at this point, I believe we've seen Tailwind out of Josh's Salamence before, but it looks like at the current moment, Josh really wants to just try and get this Groudon down, and he just barely misses the KO with that Hyper Voice. But it does mean that because Incineroar stayed asleep, he wasn't able to get a fake out on the Xerneas. He was it seems like he was kind of banking on that fake out to come through, prevent the Geomancy, which would have put him in a nice situation at the end of this turn.
Yeah, I mean, the Tailwind, if he does have Tailwind, which he probably does, most Salamence are carrying it, I'm not sure it would have made much of a difference. The Salamence is still going to, get knocked out by any one attack from the Xerneas, and you lose the opportunity to fire off a Hyper Voice before it Geomancies. And, even though that Precipice Blade's dodging or missing the Incineroar this time, it's way too little too late for Josh now, because this Xerneas is now boosted. It will have free reign to start firing off Dazzling Gleams, and this Incineroar would need a bit of a miracle to be able to knock out the Xerneas before it gets knocked out itself.
Yeah, so unfortunately the sleep turns are really coming in handy for Ethan here. Precipice Blaze, it looks like it will finally connect on that Incineroar, so Josh just not quite getting the RNG to roll his way today. Really good positioning on both sides. Ethan understanding what his best plays are, knowing what his outs are, and I don't think that, again, I feel like it's kind of unfair to just say, hey, that's RNG, that's all it was down to. That definitely put Ethan in a better position, but Ethan just had a very high understanding of what position he was in basically throughout that entire game. Right,
and part of being able to close out these games is knowing what kind of board positions you need to be able to do so. And Ethan, knowing that he was in a pretty bad spot, he identified, if this happens, then I have a chance of winning, and so he played to that, that end, and he got it. And so, I don't think we can downplay the RNG element either. Obviously the Precipice Blade's missing, really unfortunate for Josh, and that easily is what lost him the game at that point. But at least you have to praise Ethan for knowing that was his option, and he played to that option and happened to get it, and so that is why he won that game. It wasn't just some random and maybe I'll get lucky and blah blah blah. He exactly. He knew exactly what had to happen.
Right.
He gave himself the chance.
Yeah, and like, if that Salamence had taken just a little bit more damage on Precipice Blades, like going into this game 2 here, one of the interesting things that we keep talking about, this information game, right? One of the big bits of information that Josh just picked up was the fact that Groudon is a little bit bulkier than what Josh maybe expected, because that Hyper Voice didn't KO.
Right.
And then Ethan also picking up a little bit more information, because maybe he was hoping that Precipice Blades early on at +1 was going to be able to take out that Salamence, and that Salamence barely hung on, with just a couple handfuls of HP, right? So going into this game, now we see both Pokemon with Fake Out kind of leading out for these players. How do you like any of the adjustments that you see potentially coming?
If Josh is a little bit less careless with his Xerneas, I think that could help him a lot. We saw him kind of just leave it on the field to get knocked out in these last couple of games, and so it's kind of an interesting choice on that end. But we actually see no fake outs on either side this time around.
Very, very surprising. Spore just coming out for Smeargle, putting that Incineroar to sleep, which, as we saw in the last game, Incineroar being asleep was very, very clutch for Ethan's win in the last game. So Incineroar here just kind of ignoring Smeargle as a threat, and unfortunately getting a little bit burned for it. So Smeargle's accuracy falling, which doesn't seem to matter too much for him in this game.
What's different about this game is that Incineroar immediately took a turn to sleep. So now it's liable to wake up on any turn. And the Smeargle's already low, obviously switching out. Probably its best option there, bringing the Groudon in instead. But Smeargle, it put the Incineroar to sleep, but not as risk-free as it did in the previous game, because Incineroar doesn't have this guaranteed turn of sleep anymore.
Right, that's a very good observation, something that we need to point out. So Groudon is coming out here, again, free of Intimidate, so this Incineroar hasn't been able to be in a great position there. Gravity going to go ahead and come out, make sure that Precipice Blades aren't capable of missing for Ethan here, which again, kind of backfired on Ethan in the last turn. A Z move coming out here. Hello.
Is this the first Z move we've seen all day?
This is indeed the first Z move that we've seen all day. I got very concerned there with that little bit of lag. Malicious Moon Salt.
Yes,
Hello.
This is something Incineroar has started running recently. We never saw this in 2018. This is not a set that got ran at all last year. And so people started running this because I believe Malicious Moonsault knocks out Lunala through Shadow Shield, which is really nice because not many things can do that. And so it gives Incineroar a much more offensive presence. It's something that you don't really see as an offensive Pokemon because even though it's using all offensive moves, its moves are like Fake Out and U-Turn and Snarl and Throat Chop, which aren't really known for their damage output. And so it's a cool move. It reveals that Darkest Lariat is an attack that Incineroar is running, but it's obviously a worthwhile option because he was able to get a huge knockout on that Bronzong, and now his Xerneas is at full health, staring down this Groudon and Smeargle instead of already down to 30% or so as it was last game.
Yeah, and as we've already seen, this Incineroar is slower than that Smeargle, so it's still kind of a mind game. Because you don't want to take too much damage on this Xerneas. We saw how that was a big issue. So at this point, you want to watch out for the spores. You needed to watch out for the fake outs, and you want to try and avoid as much damage as possible on the Xerneas so that you can keep it sustained into the late game. Precipice Blades are going off, obviously hitting because of that gravity. No chance of missing here. And then Dazzling Gleam just going straight away. He is respecting this Smeargle a little bit more this game.
Yeah, I think it's a smart play. If you are Josh there, the fake out coming in from Incineroar means that Incineroar can't knock out Smeargle before it attacks. And so, knowing that Smeargle would either have to do that or try and spore the Xerneas, doubling that slot with something like a Darkest Lariat and Dazzling Gleam, get some chip damage on Groudon, but it also allows you to make sure that nothing gets put to sleep, which is really nice.
Yeah, now we've got this Groudon basically just above half health, and this Xerneas that's below half health. But this does mean that Josh is able to bring his own Groudon out. And again, Ethan, I really have to give Ethan a lot of credit here for understanding where his opponent can go at any point. Because I feel like understanding that, hey, Groudon's probably in the back, and this is a really good spot for Groudon to come out, just bringing your Intimidator out and saying, hey, I know you've got it. I know you're bringing it.
Right.
Here's an Intimidate so that we can keep this game going.
Yeah, like that's true, but I also think that Josh is in a way better spot right now because he does have that Pokemon advantage. And presumably the last Pokemon for Josh in the back is Salamence, to be able to intimidate the Groudon. Yeah, we do see it there. And so this is much more serviceable for Josh because this Xerneas, it's sandwiched in between the Groudon and Salamence speed-wise. And so even though Trick Room is still up, the Salamence will be attacking last, and so Xerneas will be able to Moonblast it, possibly Dazzling Gleam to try and get some more damage off. But it would be very unlikely for the Groudon on Ethan's end to be able to knock out the Xerneas immediately, and so he's likely going to be able to get off a pretty big attack here.
Yeah, so that Precipice Blades is going to come out. It looks like it picks up the Salamence, which is kind of surprising given that Intimidate came out. But Moonblast coming in, going to go ahead and target that Mega Salamence. So a pretty clutch Precipice Blades, but a nice knockout here with the Xerneas.
Yeah, very smart from Josh, knowing that Ethan would have to double target the Xerneas if he wants to knock it out. And so Moonblast covers the option for that Salamence to not protect and try and go for an attack. And so I don't remember seeing if Trick Room ended this past turn, but if it didn't, I'm sure it ends this coming turn. And so, all Josh has to do is make sure he protects this turn if Trick Room is still up, and then he can fire for Precipice Blades and hopefully not miss again.
Yeah, so what's interesting, they just came up on screen. This is the last turn of Trick Room.
Okay.
And then we've got 2 more turns of Gravity left. So that means that basically, like, we can kind of trade things around. So it seems pretty standard that what's going to happen here is that Ethan's going to try and go for these Precipice Blades, right? And then next turn, Josh is going to try and go for the Precipice Blades. But now Ethan has to play his out of Precipice Blades missing.
That is his out, but now we know that Josh has Substitute on his Groudon, and so if he wants to try and predict Ethan's Protect, he could sub up and give himself 2 chances to hit a Blades instead of just 1. And so Josh has ways to put this more into his favor, but it is pretty, at least 85% in his favor already.
Yeah. So we do see that Ethan is going to try and go that route, try and kind of stall out his own Gravity here. And Josh absolutely understands that that's a potential here. So he goes for the Geomancy and gets his Xerneas up to +2/+2/+2. There's a lot of 2s in there. And it'd be kind of interesting to find out here if he goes for this Precipice Blades just to kind of cover all options.
Yeah.
He does indeed, not getting too greedy trying to go for a Substitute and a Geomancy here.
Yeah, I think that was a really good middle ground play. If Ethan decided to attack that turn, he would have been able to hopefully secure a knockout with the Precipice Blades as long as it missed. But even if he did, miss Precipice Blades on Ethan's Groudon, and Ethan's Groudon connected with 2 Blades, there's no way that Josh's Groudon would have been knocked out by Blades, and so he still gave himself 2 chances to hit a Precipice Blades. But calling that Protect, going for a Geomancy means that he's able to just Moonblast instead.
Yeah, so here we've got that Xerneas getting a Moonblast special attack drop on Ethan's Groudon, which probably doesn't make any lick of difference. But what that does mean is that Ethan's Groudon is at very, very low HP.
Yeah, a Fire Punch from Josh's Groudon will be able to finish it off here without good missing. And so looks like that's what's going to happen, and we're going to see a Game 3 here in this 4th round.
Absolutely. So, what a great adjustment from Josh. And again, we can't... I struggle talking about RNG sometimes in Pokemon because it is a factor, but I don't want to give too much credence to the idea that, somebody only won because of RNG. Like, it's part of the game and we play to it.
Right, yeah.
So I don't want to take that win away from Ethan game 1, but I will mention that Josh, for sure, having a little bit better RNG. Incineroar woke up turn 1, and then, not missing anything. He made sure that there was nothing that was really available to miss.
Yeah.
He launched Precipice Blades only under Gravity, and then he put his own Groudon in a really good position, and making sure that he had that extra turn, because he when you're locking in your moves that last turn, right, it seems kind of weird that Groudon would protect and have a Moonblast, right? But if we stop and think about it for a second, I want to give Josh a lot of credit for that. Because he doesn't know how much Moonblast is going to do, and he doesn't know if he if he absolutely has to go for Press with Blades or Fire Punch. And I think being a little bit gun-shy based on the RNG that was in the previous match, he absolutely wanted to avoid any chance of missing. So I want to give him full credit for identifying those risks and mitigating those completely.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh definitely played that last game quite well. We do see a switch up from Ethan this time. We're going to see the Smeargle Xerneas lead. And it looks like we're just going to see a double Geomancy coming out here.
Yeah, so Ethan, recognizing that his Smeargle is faster, goes ahead and fakes out the Incineroar here, which I find kind of fun.
It's interesting that... I guess we're just going to see a Geomancy trade here. But the Smeargle having its Focus Sash still intact means that Ethan's going to be able to put something to sleep this turn if he wants to. There's really nothing Josh can do to stop that, unless Smeargle happens to get a speed drop or something and the Incineroar's faster. But Ethan kind of has to... Sorry, Josh kind of has to play the sleep turn game again. It's a bit of a mind game, too, because if you want to protect Xerneas and maybe, like, you turn off the Smeargle to break the Sash, Ethan could very well just spoil the Incineroar, and now you're even in a worse spot. And so I like Ethan's position much more here, just because he does have that Smeargle with a Sash, which is able to play that sport game.
Absolutely. The mind games here are incredibly tense. Just making sure that you know that you're in a good position. So, as mentioned, Josh is going to go ahead and protect this Xerneas, and it looks like, both players wanting to protect as much on their Xerneas as possible. So, Snarl here. So, no U-turn. So, we've seen Snarl and Fake Out, and we've seen the Malicious Moonsault, which means he's got the...
He's either missing Flare Blitz or U-turn. Yeah. I'm not sure if we've seen either, actually.
But either way, still going pretty well. Like, I really enjoy that Snarl there. So if you think that your Incineroar is going to be able to survive, and you want to break the Sash, right?
Right.
So, I mean, you've got the opposing Xerneas that's Geomancied, and you want to drop its special attack a little bit. Breaking the Sash, it's kind of a 2-for-1 deal there. And so now Ethan is going for the Moonblast, trying to get as much damage on Josh's Xerneas and doing over half, bringing the opposing Xerneas down into the yellow, which is kind of impressive.
Yeah, we know Xerneas is strong. This is no secret at this point. But as you said, that Snarl a couple turns ago was super smart from Josh. Even if the Xerneas on Ethan's end didn't protect, he would have gotten that special attack drop. And so now the Xerneas on Ethan's end is sitting at +1 special attack instead of +2. The Xerneas on Josh's end is still at +2 and awake and not sleeping, which is important. And so even though this Groudon coming in here, not going to be able to be knocked out by one Moonblast. We all know that Groudon is a very bulky Pokemon, and especially with that secondary fire typing from the Primordial version, it's a pretty good Xerneas check. And so Ethan not in a bad position at all. He is, at -1 special attack now, but this Groudon is sitting in a pretty good spot, hoping to do a lot of damage.
All right, so we do see that Josh wants to protect his Xerneas as much as possible. So Dazzling Gleam is going to come out from Ethan, doing a little bit of damage, a pretty good chunk of damage to this Incineroar. And then Ethan making sure that Press with Blades is definitely going to pick up the KO on Incineroar. Yep. And so this will give kind of an open switch for Josh here.
I wouldn't be surprised to see his own Groudon come in. Yeah, there it is. So now we're at a point where we've got these two boosted Xerneas against these two healthy Groudon. The Groudon on Ethan's end a little bit less healthy rather, just because it did take that Dazzling Gleam. But these two Groudons... Oh, no, it didn't protect it. I'm dumb. Sorry.
Yeah, right.
But, anything like a Dazzling Gleam and a Press with Blades, likely able to knock out either of the Pokemon on either person's side. So it might come down to whose Groudon's faster. I think we know that Josh's is faster, and so if Josh is able to Dazzling Gleam, possibly get some damage off on both Pokemon before his own Xerneas gets knocked out by Moonblast, Press with Blades may be able to finish off both of these Pokemon for Josh.
Yeah, and so because Ethan is at only +1, right? We saw that Moonblast did around half, right?
Right.
So does that change kind of how you would play this as Ethan?
I'm not sure. Like, either way, you're not really liking your position here. If Moonblast can't knock out Xerneas, that's even worse for you. So I'm not sure that changes anything other than maybe hoping even more for a critical hit instead as much as you were before.
So we do see that Ethan is going to switch out his Groudon here, trying to get an Intimidate. I mean, this is basically kind of like in a baseball sense, a sacrificial pop fly, right?
Right.
You're trying to get a runner on base, and you're basically throwing this Salamence into things, trying to get some damage off, but then also get an Intimidate out.
Right, and a really unfortunate miss for Josh there. Considering the Intimidate, it may not have been able to finish off Xerneas, but it absolutely would have put it in range for something like a Dazzling Gleam. And so now, Josh has to kind of worry about, do I Dazzling Gleam and Precipice Blades, or do I Moonblast the Groudon to secure that KO? Do I Moonblast the Xerneas to knock it out? It puts Ethan in a more serviceable position, even if it's still not the best.
Ethan understanding that his Xerneas being boosted is really beneficial for him, even if it's only at +1. But Dazzling Gleam is going to come out here, do about a quarter to Ethan's Groudon, and then is this Precipice Blades going to make a connection? It looks like it will. We haven't seen any error message about missing anything, but unfortunately isn't able to pick up the KO. But it does make you wonder if Moonblast plus the Precipice Blades would have been able to pick up that KO.
I want to say it would have. That Groudon is at a low enough health that could have been the difference between a Moonblast and a Dazzling Gleam. And, knowing how that turn played out, the Precipice Blades missing the Xerneas last turn didn't really matter unless the Xerneas would have been knocked out, which I don't really think it would have. Just knowing that Xerneas tend to be pretty bulky, and that Groudon we've seen is pretty fast on Josh's end. So, Ethan knowing full well that, his Groudon was the key to winning this game because he needed to keep that Groudon around in order to check the Groudon on Josh's end. Now that the Xerneas on Ethan's end is still boosted, it's at that +2 speed, only +1 special attack, but you don't even need the +1 to knock out Salamence. And so we're going to see a Moonblast, and it looks like Ethan's going to move on to 3-1.
Absolutely. So, I mean, just again, fantastic play here today in Kansas City. I guess it's Kansas City metro area because they're technically they're in Independence, Missouri today.
Close enough.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I really want to hammer in on the fact that there's this little bit of a stigma against some of these GS Cup matches where people sometimes assume that it's always heavy offense, it's always going to be these heavy-hitting Pokemon only doing damage, and what we've definitely seen today is that there's quite a bit of positional play available.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way that we've seen all 4 of these matches play out, a lot of people have played, position game really well. There have been some that have been more defensive in nature, some a little bit more offensive in nature, but the way that you kind of position yourself to start securing KOs without much risk is pretty important in this format, because a lot of the times you have to rely on like 2, 3 maybe of your 6 Pokemon to kind of do the heavy lifting. Yeah. And so that kind of lends this format to making sure those Pokemon are safe before you start firing off moves.
Yeah.
What?
Firing off the music.
I don't know what that was.
All right. Well, that was the end of round 4. We should have some announcements about Top Cut and who might be in Top Cut shortly. So please stay tuned, and we'll see you for Top Cut.